Hello everyone, I'm Jay Joshi and welcome to the 23rd episode of Learning Java. Today we'll be learning about functions. So to understand functions, we first need to know about the main method. So in my previous episodes, while writing the code, you might have noticed that first we declare the import java.util.star, which is for the package for the scanner class, etc. Then call the name of the class. So I initialize the class name. So in this case, the class name is function. So class function. And inside this class function, inside the class, I can write my code. Now, instead of just writing my code inside the class, let's say instead of like just doing system.out.build, etc. over here, I do something called public static void main, inside which I write my code. So inside this public static void main, I write all my scanner sc system.out.print and any other for loop, while loop, etc. Any other function I have to perform, I do that inside the main. Now, to understand functions, we need to understand this statement. So this public, first of all, this can be any other thing. So this can be public, private, and there are some others as well. So it basically is to show how this particular main method can be accessed. So this thing is a method or a function, not the main one, but see, since this is main, this is not technically a method or a function, but to stand function, we need to like get the meaning of this. So this public tells us how or where this thing main can be accessed. So since it's public, it can be accessed publicly. I'll be explaining what this public means later on. This can also be private and we can just completely remove this also. It doesn't really matter for now. So let's say we put this for now. Now this static is just to give something a category. So let's say there are variables like int a, int b. So since it's only int or string, double, or any other data type, it's not a static variable. To make something static, we have to put static int a, static int b, static double c. So static is basically a category. So it can either be static or non-static. If we want it to be non-static, we just remove the static. So this main method has to be static, so we put static over here. Now this void, and also this static, you don't really have to properly understand it now, and even the public meaning, but just know what it basically means. Now the void is basically, the English meaning of void means nothing, like there's nothing. So when we say void, it means nothing is being returned. So over here, whatever we put, it signifies what this particular method will return. So for a recall, this specifies the access, where this can be accessed, publicly, privately, or any other place. This is the access. This is whether it's static or non-static, which is basically like a category kind of a thing. And this is the return type. This is very important for functions because functions return something. Now, what do they return? If they return nothing, it'll be void. If they return an integer, it'll be int. If they return like double, it'll be double. If they return string, it will be string. If they return an array, over here, it'll be the data type of that particular array. So this is the return type. Now, to return something, we use the command return, return, and whatever the variable a, let's say, or anything. This is the return. Now, return is basically like a jump statement. So you might recall jump statement. Jump statements are basically a break, continue, and return. So jump statements basically transfer the control to some other part of the code. So return is also a jump statement. So I'll be covering what this return is later on in the video. So this is basically the return type. Now over here, this main is the name of a particular function. So the main always has a particular name. Now, when we make a function, the function can have any particular name. It can be any name, but it should follow the rules of the identifiers. So it can have any name. The name can be fun, it can be ABCD, or anything. It can be A, B, C, any name. It can have any name, but it should just follow the identifier rules. So this is the name. Now we put these open and closed brackets. Now what are these brackets for? In these brackets, we put the parameters. So now it'll take a time. it'll take a bit of time to understand what parameters are, but if there are no parameters, we leave these brackets empty. So now let's look at the function. Now, let's say I want to create a function, draw line. That's the name of the function, draw line. So first we have to write the access specifier. So it can be public or private. We'll put public in this case. We can leave this blank also. We don't have to put anything. And if you just don't want to put anything, then you just continue from here. So let's say we put public. Now we have to mention whether it's static or non-static. If it's non-static, again, we just leave it blank. If it's static, then we put something. If it's non-static, then it'll be object-oriented programming, which I'll be covering in the next video. So right now we are doing it in the static way. So we put static. Now I set the return type, this void. So currently this drawLine function which I want to create doesn't have a return type, so I'll leave it void because there is no return type. And the name of the function, let's keep it drawLine, a meaningful name, drawLine, because the function is to draw a line. And I'm leaving the parameter, so there are no parameters in this function, so I'm leaving it blank. Now in this, so this is, I've created a function over here. This entire thing is a function, like how this is the entire main part where you write the code. This is a function or a method. In this function or method, we can do anything. So whatever we do in main, we can do in a function. So over here, we can do again, initialize any variable, scanners, print, for loops, while, etc. We can do anything, whatever we do in this main thing. So they're basically similar as to what they do. One thing, yeah, and that's pretty much it about the function. Now, why do we need a function? So let's say you're writing a very big application and you want to split your big code into different parts. How do you do that? So to make the code lesser complex, let's say you want to draw a line. So let's say I have a main function and there's like lots of code before, lots of code after, and in the middle I'm drawing a line. So let's have a piece of code over here. For int I is equal to 0, I should be less than, let's say, 10, and then I plus plus, and then I perform the function system.out.println, and then I do not print because it's line, and then I do a dash. So if I execute this code, ignore this for now. Let's say we put this entire thing in comment. Now let's say in this main method, I perform this following function to draw this 10 dashes because I is equal to 0, I should be less than 10, I plus plus. And if I do void main, why isn't this working? System.print. If I do, oh, that's because the class name. So if I put functions, then it should work. Yeah. So now you can see that these dashes are printed 10 times. So this piece of code I wrote to print a line. Now let's say I want to do this, like let's say I'm writing a big code and I want to do this function 100 times. I won't keep writing this code 100 times, these two lines 100 times. I don't want to write it again and again. So for that, I can make a function to perform the function draw line. So this can be as big as I want. So let's say this is like a 200 line function which I have to perform 100 times. So I won't write those 200 lines of code 100 times. That'll be like very complicated. Make the code very big and complex unnecessarily. So what I can do is this 200 line code, I can put it inside a function. So this is the function over here, which I have initialized. And instead of writing it in the main, I can put this entire thing in the drawLine function. So I have the function drawLine. This is the access specifier. This is the category, static or non-static. This is the return type. So currently it's not returning anything, so it's void. And this is the name of the function. And since there are no parameters, this brackets are blank. And inside these curly brackets, I have put the piece of code I want inside the drawLine function. So if I call the drawLine function, it will perform this. Now, how do I call the drawLine function? Functions can be called inside functions or in the main method. So usually you call them in the main method. So let's say I do this. So this is how you call a function. So to call a function in the main, for example, you write the name of the function and then the brackets. So if we have parameters in this, then there'll be parameters inside this as well. but since in this case there are no parameters, so we just call it like this. So the name of the function and then open and close brackets, and then you put the semicolon. Now what this will do is when the code is executed, first you'll come to import java.util.star, it'll call all the packages, then it'll create the class functions, and then it directly goes to main. So the first piece of code which is executed is always the main. So when the main is called, it'll see that the function draw line is called. And when this draw line function is called, it'll call this particular function draw line and it'll perform this. And when this gets over, it comes back over here. And then it'll perform whatever the rest of the code we have over here. So whatever code we have over here. And let's say if you have some piece of code over here, it'll perform that. Then it'll come draw line. It'll call the draw line function, perform this. Then it'll go back over here and do the rest of the code. So it just continues like that. It's just that instead of having this piece of code over here, we just put it inside a function so that it looks neater over here, making the code more compact. So the output will be the same. It'll just print those dashes 10 times. So this is the main use of a function, is to make the code more compact, easily readable, etc. Now let's look at the parameters. So parameters are put inside these brackets. And a parameter can be any value. It can be integer, double, float, string, arrays, etc. Another point to note here is that whatever variables I declare inside a function, they cannot be accessed anywhere else. So this int I variable, you can't access this entire variable inside main or any other function. And also there can be multiple functions. So I can have a void drawLine function, then I can have a function called anything else, ABC, then I can have another function called hello. So there can be multiple functions in a program. Now, let's see what parameters are. So let's say in this case, I want to print 10 dashes. But let's say I don't know how many dashes I want to print. I want to ask the user, how many dashes do you want? So let's say if you have a code over here, system.out.println, println how many, and we ask the user how many dashes. So we are asking the user, and let's say in the variable int a is equal to sc.next int, the user enters how many dashes he wants over here, and that number is stored in a. Now I want to send this a value into this particular function. So when calling the function, I can put a as a parameter, so in drawLine a, and over here I can have int a as the parameter. Now I'll be explaining this in a moment. So a is the number of dashes I want, and over here, since now I can do something like this. So I is equal to 0 and I should be less than a. So this piece of code should work. Now what this does is, let me explain. So first we ask the user how many dashes he wants, and it gets stored in a. Now when we call the function and we put the value a as the parameter. Now let's say the value of a is 20. So we call the function drawLine with the parameter 20, which is an integer value. Now when it goes over here, it does public static void drawLine, and it's int a. So what we are doing over here is, this variable int a can be anything. It can be any type. So it should be integer because this is integer. So the parameter data type should be the same. So since this is integer, this should also be integer, but the name can be anything. So it can be b for in this case, and then this will also become b. And this is how it is. So if I call an integer over here in the calling function, in the actual function, it becomes any other name. It can be the same name also, because as I said, these variables cannot be accessed over here, and these variables cannot be accessed over here. So this can be any name, and then this value, so for example b in this case, will have the same value as a. So since I'm calling a, this b will have the same value as a. So if I execute this code, it'll print, let's say if I input the value 20 in a, it'll print 20 dashes over here. So if I execute this code now, the output, let's see what the output is. So how many dashes? Let's say I put 20, and then it prints 20 dashes. So this is how this code works. So this is what the parameter basically looks like. Now, can we have multiple parameters? The answer is yes. So let's say I have something like int b is equal to let's say it's 5, and then dou double c is equal to, let's say, 10.3. And I want to put all these three parameters a, b, and c in this function. So I can just do this a, b, and c, a, b, and c, and over here, since now, so this is int a. Now we need something to match over here. So let's say we have int I. It can be int a, b, c again, because the name doesn't matter, because these variables cannot be accessed over here and vice versa. So let's say I have not int I because I'm using that in the for loop. I have int m, then b is also int, so int n, and then since we have double b. Now this code will work, so it will transfer these particular values into this, and then this code will be just based on that. Now an important point to note over here is that these variables should be of the same data type and in the same particular order. And this is important because there's something called function overloading, which we'll cover later. But if you see over here, there are three parameters. So this should also have three parameters. This is int double, and this should also be int double. And the order should also be the same. So let's say if I put this double over here instead over there, then this code will not work. It should be in the same order. And also these parameters, as you can see, are separated by commas, which is a separator. Now, so this is how you basically can use parameters. So in different cases, you can have unlimited number of parameters. They can be all of different data types and all. Now let's see how the return type works. So let's say I'll remove these parameters for now. We'll keep only one parameter. So let's say I want to perform a function which returns the square of a number, right? So we ask the user how number, we ask him to print the number, enter number, and he enters his number in the variable a. And then we pass this a as a parameter into the function draw line, which is currently squaring a number. So to square a number, we multiply the number by itself. So we do m is equal to m into m. So let me give a try. I don't know what's happening. When this function draw line a is called, let's say this a number is 20. It goes over here, so the value of m is 20. So we do m is equal to m into m. So 20 into 20, which is 400, which is the square of 20. And now if I do this, it doesn't really do anything. Like, it just calculates the value and it just stores it internally, right? Even if I do something like this, system.out.println, and I print the output of this particular function, it won't really do anything because this isn't returning anything, right? The value of m is stored at 400, but that doesn't mean we are showing it to the user. So to return a value, we have to use a jump statement function called the return, and it can be invoked this way. So we do return m. So you're returning the value m. Now, how is this working? So when this drawLine function is called with the value a, it goes over here. So let's say this value is 20. So m is equal to 20 into 20, which is 400. And it's returning the value m. So when it returns m, whatever the value of m is, this function becomes that particular value. Now, since we are returning a value m, which is of an integer data type, as I said, this part over here, the void, specifies the return type. So you have to put int over here, since the data type of what we are returning is int. So this function, let's say if I show you the output, I enter the number 20 and the output's 400. So you ask the user what number, they put input a as 20. Then we do system.out.println draw line a. As soon as it sees draw line a, it calls the function draw line with 20 as the parameter. Since this is int, the thing is going to return, the function is going to return the value of an integer, and it performs 20 into 20, and then it returns the value m. Now, unlike parameters, we can only have one return type. We cannot have multiple return. We cannot do int, comma, double. We can only return one value, which is of a particular data type. So either we can return an int, double, string, array, etc. So this is what this is. And another point to note here is that the parameter doesn't have like a variable declaration, but over here in the actual function, it does have a declaration of that particular data type. So these are some little important things to know. So in these cases, you can actually use a function to find out, to make your code more compact, make it more readable with the help of parameters, return type, the particular name, and this is basically what you're doing. This return thing, as I mentioned, is a jump statement. So as soon as this is encountered in a code, it transfers the control. So it transfers it back to the function, and this function acquires the value of what the return type is. Now, there's also many other things to cover in functions, such as function overloading, and also there's object-oriented programming with the help of constructors, etc., which I'll be covering in the next couple of videos. So that's it for today, everyone. Thanks for watching, and if you have any queries or suggestions, you can mail me. My email will be in the description down below. And thanks again for watching.